I love it. I love love. What can I say? Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to be going over all of my favorite reads of 2023. I can't believe that this year is over, but I had a really good reading year and I'm excited to go over all my favorite books. So, I decided to pick 13 books and then I have some honorable mentions. Okay, the year isn't over just yet, but so far I've read, I believe, 73 books, and my goal was to read 40 books at first, and then I added 30 more, which is 70 total, and I hit that goal. So proud of myself for that. I think I'll read around like 2 more books before the year is over, but as of right now, I've already picked out my favorite books. The way I picked out these books was going through my ratings for every book I read, and I chose obviously all the 5 stars and some 4 stars. Oh, I chose some 4.5 stars and then some 4 stars. So I actually have a little list in my notebook. So I gave only 8 out of 73 books 5 stars. So as you can tell, I'm very picky with my ratings, especially when I give a book 5 stars. And then 5 out of those 8 were not rereads, they were new reads, but otherwise the other 3 that I gave 5 stars were rereads for me. And then I gave a total of 4 books 4.5 stars, and I gave a total of 17 books 4 stars, and 15 of those were not rereads. The other 2 were rereads. So it was cool to go over that. I don't know, I just wanted to share it. And yeah, that's basically how I chose my favorite books. I just made a list and I obviously I'm gonna include all my 5 stars in this list, and then I went through I included all 4.5 stars and then the ones I gave 4.5 stars, and I chose only 4 books from my 4 stars, even though there were 17. But I went through and only chose 4. So we're gonna go over a total of my top 13 reads of the year, and then I also have some honorable mentions because those are rereads and I just wanted to include those as well, but as honorable mentions because those books weren't new to me, and I believe I rated them 5 stars to begin with. But yeah, I reread them this year. We're gonna start off, well, first of all, I think I'm gonna go in order of the 5 stars, the 4.5 stars, and then 4 stars. I'm not going to go too in depth with each book. I'm kind of just going to say why. Something I liked about the book. Why I gave it the rating I did. I'm not going to go too in depth about what the book's about, if that makes sense. So, these are my favorite books of 2023. First book I'm going to talk about is Happy Place by Emily Henry. If you've seen my other videos, you've heard me talk about this book so much. This came out in 2023, and I've read every book by Emily Henry, and I can say this is my favorite book by her. This is a romance, contemporary romance, but it was way deeper than a romance. It was about friendships, career paths, finding out what you really want in life, and it was just, this book made me feel every emotion. I loved it so much. I love the characters. I love her writing. So good. 5 stars. Highly recommend. I could say so much about this book, but I'm just gonna leave with that. So next book that I gave 5 stars is Alone with You in the Ether by Olivia Blake. I've also talked about this a lot on my channel. This is a romance book, but it's not your typical fluffy, easy read romance. It has heavy topics in it. Both the people in the relationship in this book suffer with mental illness, and this book is so deep and it's so beautifully written, and it's just very romantic, and I absolutely loved this book. It was the second book I read this year, and I think about it so much still, and the year is almost over, so there's that. Next favorite read of 2023 is Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. This is the artist Japanese Breakfast. It's her memoir, and I think this was my second memoir I've ever read. I typically don't really reach for these, well, at first. Now I really appreciate memoirs, especially after reading this one. So this is basically about Michelle dealing with her mother battling cancer and losing her mother, and she also talks about her career path in this memoir, and this is just Such a good read. I cried. It's pretty sad, but it's also written so well and made me look at life differently, and I highly recommend this. If you want to get into reading memoirs and you don't really know which one to pick, I highly recommend this. Fourth 5-star read of the year is The Love Wager by Lynn Painter. This is a romance novel, and this is one of her adult romance books. She's mainly known for her young adult romance book, which is Better Than the Movies. I think I read this after that one, but anyways, I absolutely love this book. This is like top 5 romance books I read this year. The banter in this is just so unmatched. I literally couldn't put this down. It's written so well, flows so well. I love the chemistry between the characters. This is like a perfect romance book in my eyes. So my mom just got home. The last 5-star read I gave this year that wasn't a reread is The Last Letter by Rebecca Yarros. I feel like this book is not super popular compared to like Fourth Wing. This was my 3rd read I ever read by her and probably my favorite book by her. I think this book is so well written and it's so romantic. Overall, this is just like a really solid romance book. Like I said, it's very romantic. It's written well. The plot was strong. The characters were very developed. Everyone should read this. So good, especially if you like romance. Now we're getting into my 4.5-star reads from 2023. The first book I'm going to talk about is, well, technically this is my 6th favorite read of the year. This is Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton. I've also talked about this a lot on my channel. This is a memoir. This was the first book I read this year, and I still think about this book very often. This follows Dolly in her early 20s to her 30s. This is about relationships, platonic, romantic. It's about her career, about just like finding out who she is as a person and what she really cares about in life. And it's just so funny. It's sad. It's comforting. It's all of the above. I love this book so much, and I think everyone in their 20s should read this book. If you want to get into reading memoirs, I highly recommend this. Second 4.5-star read of the year I'm going to talk about is You Again by Kate Goldbeck. I recently read this and I loved it so much. This is a When Harry Met Sally retelling, which I've never seen, and I honestly don't think I'll ever watch that movie. I've heard bad things about it. This is like loosely inspired by it because the characters like run into each other throughout a couple years until they finally become friends. This is friends to lovers, enemies to friends to lovers, I would say. They get off on the wrong foot every time they meet. So I really loved the chemistry and the build up between these characters, and these characters were so well developed. I feel like they were just very raw and real, and they had a lot of issues going on individually, but they couldn't deny the chemistry they had between one another. I don't know, I really love this book. This was one of my top romance reads of the year. Next 4.5-star read of the year for me is Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. This is the first book in the Magnolia Parks series. There's 4 books. This is basically romance, I would say, but it follows a group of friends that live in the UK and they're all rich, and this is just very drama filled. It's super entertaining. It's not like the best romance you'll ever read about. It's like a pretty toxic romance, but I love this book because I really love Jessa Hastings' writing and I was super entertained. But a lot of people love or hate this book. I think you should give it a shot if you like romance and you like realistic romance book, like realistic relationships. Like I said, this romance is not pretty, but I did enjoy reading this. I was super entertained. I heard a lot of people say that if you enjoy the show Gossip Girl, you would enjoy this book. So that's what I'm gonna say. I've never seen the show, but this is just, I don't know. I know the romance in this is toxic, but also the love they have for each other is like really deep. When I think about this book, I think of the song That's the Way I Love You by Taylor Swift. So do what you will with that information. I'm flying through these. Last 4.5-star rating I gave, which is my 9th favorite read of the year, is All the Things We Left Unfinished by Rebecca Yarros. I discovered Rebecca Yarros in 2023 and I've almost read all of her books, and I would say this is my 3rd favorite by her. and this is a romance. I feel like her romance books, at least the ones I've read, besides Great and Precious Things, because I didn't love that one, but this one and the one I just spoke about, The Last Letter, I feel like her romance books are very like romantic. That's like what I think of when I think of them. The relationships are just so deep and romantic, and I love it. I love love. What can I say? This one was really interesting though, because it followed 2 different timelines. It kind of was a book within a book, if that makes sense. It probably doesn't make sense to you. You have to read the book in order for that to make sense. But this follows the main character. Her name is Georgia. It follows Georgia in the present time and her romance with someone, and then also you're getting flashbacks to her grandma's point of view and her romance she had when she was serving in the war. I think it was World War II. Yeah, World War II. So yeah, the concept of this was really interesting, and I think it was really well done. And like I said, I just really enjoyed it. If you like romance, I highly recommend this. Okay, we're through all my 5-star reads and all my 4.5-star reads. Now we're gonna get into my favorite 4-star reads of the year. Like I said, I had 17, but I only picked 4 out of the 17. So first book I'm going to talk about, I don't have the actual book, I just have the sleeve because I'm lending it out to a friend, but this is Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. This is the second fantasy book I've ever read, and I think this is a great way to get into fantasy if you don't know where to start and you like romance, because there is a heavy subplot of romance in this fantasy. Another reason why I loved this, because I thought it was super romantic, because the 2 characters, so Iris and Rowan, they're both journalists and they work at the same company, and basically they both have these typewriters that are connected somehow to one another, and when they write, like she writes a letter, it shows up in his house. Yes? Basically her letters that she's typing with her typewriter, it's showing up in Roman's possession, and they start speaking through these letters, and I just really loved their connection and their story, and I actually really enjoyed the fantasy aspect of this as well. There's basically a war happening with these creatures and they're involved in it, and yeah, I don't know, I'm not gonna get too much into this, but very good fantasy / romance book, and I'm so excited for the next one to come out. It actually comes out I think on the 25th of December. I'm really excited for that release. Highly recommend. I keep saying that after every book, but obviously I recommend it. My 11th favorite read of the year is Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. It follows 2 characters that have a one-night stand and accidental pregnancy trip, which honestly did not sound intriguing to me, which I'm sure probably doesn't sound intriguing to you, but hear me out. This book is so good. This is probably one of my favorite romance books I read this year. It was written so well, and it was just very romantic. I keep saying that, but I feel like a lot of the romance books I connected to this year were not like your cheesy, like fast, I don't know how to explain it. To me, this was like a really deep romance. It was a slow burn. They weren't really focused on each other. They were focused on being good parents and preparing for the child they were going to have, and they didn't really have expectations of any romantic connection, but obviously they couldn't deny their chemistry, and I just really loved this. Yeah, also a new author to me. I'm excited for her future releases. If you've seen a lot of people talk about this and you've been thinking about picking it up, this is your sign. We only have a few left. I'm not going to say a lot about this because everyone and their mom has been talking about this year, but this genuinely was one of my favorite books of the year. I know it's very popular and everyone loves it, but yeah. Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I'm really shocked that 3 of her books are included in my top reads of the year, but I do really enjoy her writing, besides the one book I didn't like, which was Great and Precious Things. Sorry about that, but yeah, that wasn't for me. This is my 12th favorite read of the year, Fourth Wing. Fantasy, high stakes, huge subplot of romance. I don't know what else to say. Everyone talks about this, but basically if you want to get into fantasy and you're scared to, this is a really good start to the genre. I will say the second book was way more confusing and like harder to get into, but I still am really enjoying this series, and I did enjoy this book more than the second. But yeah, that's why I chose this, and I highly recommend it. Number 13, we're at the very end. Like I said, I am gonna include some honorable mentions, but this is the last one on my list. This is All Roads Lead Here by Mariana Zapata. I talk about Mariana Zapata so much on my channel because she is one of my favorite romance authors. She's the queen of slow burns, grumpy sunshine, and those are like two of my favorite tropes, and her books just never disappoint. They're always super thick, and like characters aren't actually together till like this much into the book to the very end, and she just does it so well. This follows a girl that goes back to her hometown, and she decides to rent, or she starts living in someone's garage that's being rented out. And yeah, it's a romance between her and the man that owns the property. It's just so good. I just loved it. Like, I cannot recommend her books enough if you like romance, especially if you like slow burn. She does it so well. So I really had a hard time deciding which book I wanted to include by her, because I read a couple books by her this year and they were all like 4 stars or higher. But yeah, I really liked this one. I really enjoyed the setting of this book and just the overall really good book. Just trust me, okay? Okay, those are my top reads of the year. 13 books. I decided to do 13. I don't know why, it just felt right. And now I'm gonna include some honorable mentions because there are 3 other books that I gave 5 stars, but they were rereads, so I feel like they're honorable mentions. I'm still gonna show them. So first book I'm going to talk about is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I'm not going to say much about this, but basically this book is so good, like nothing I've ever read before. The way it's written is in an interview style, and it's about this band. Think of Fleetwood Mac. They were huge back in the day, and it's about them being interviewed like 25 years later, and it's them talking about, well, reminiscing on their time, speaking about why the band broke up. And there's love triangles, there's betrayal, it's about their fame, and like, I don't know, you guys, I just really love this book, and I think the concept is so unique, and it was so well written, and it was made into a show, and I loved the show. I've already watched it twice. I reread it because I wanted to reread it before the show came out. Yeah, I really loved that book. I had to include it. Then the second 5-star read that was a reread is another Taylor Jenkins Reid book. This is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. This is kind of similar to Daisy Jones and the Six, where it follows a famous person. This is about a woman named Evelyn Hugo, and she wants to have a memoir, kind of like a memoir written, ghostwritten by this journalist, and the journalist can't seem to figure out why she picked her to do the memoir. That's like the main like plot twist of the book. You find out obviously towards the end, but yeah, this book is so well written and you just want to keep reading. Her life was so interesting. She dated a lot of people. She was married to 7 people. Yeah, this book is also super romantic in my opinion, and I literally love every book by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I've read every single book she's ever written, and I love them all. But I will say this one and Daisy Jones and the Six are like up there for me, so 5 stars. And then the final book that I gave 5 stars that I reread in 2023 is Normal People by Sally Rooney. I talked about this in one of my recent videos because I reread it recently. This is a romance book, pretty short romance book, but it basically is about 2 people, and it seems to always be right person, wrong time. That is like a huge trope. There's a lot of miscommunication in this book, but I think the reason I love this book is because Sally Rooney does a really good job about writing about flawed characters and flawed relationships. I don't know, you guys, a lot of people love or hate this book. I love it. This was also made into a show and the show made me love the book even more. It made me love the characters more. It was so well done. I really do love this book, and I think if you like very raw, deep, realistic relationships, you should read this and you'll like it. So I think that is it. Those are my favorite books of 2023. Like I said, the year isn't quite over yet. There are some books I'm going to read before the year's over, so I hope there isn't a book that I read after this that I absolutely love. If that happens, I'm going to do a December reading wrap-up, so I will be talking about all the books I read in December in that video. But those are all my favorite books from this year. Really proud of myself for hitting my goal of 70 books, and I think I'm gonna make my goal next year higher than that, but I don't know, we'll see. If you've heard about these books and you haven't read them yet, now is your time to read them. I highly recommend all those books, and I love them so much. I will be uploading 2 more times before the year's over, hopefully. But yeah, thanks for watching this video. I hope you got some book recommendations, new book recommendations out of it. And I just wanted to say, it's been a year since I started this channel, and I know a lot of people don't watch my videos, but to those who do, I really appreciate you, and thank you for watching. And if you ever want to talk about books, just message me. I'm totally down to talk about books. I need more book friends, to be honest, but thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video.